Hello, I'm Soumya. The passage is, and now the question. With which of the following statements about the operation is the author most likely to disagree? Now, for the solution, let us first check out the first option. Option number 1 says, the tumor being at the back of the base of the nose, a special retractor was attached to the skull. Now let us check out if there is any reference in the passage. Here, in the 6th paragraph, we can clearly see, down the middle of the head, the dura carries a large vein, but in a small area. Near the nose, the vein is small. At the point, the vein and dura were cut and clips made the tantalum. A hard metal were applied to arrest and prevent bleeding. Now here we can clearly see a suture were put into the dura and tied to the scalp to keep the dura open and retracted. A malleable silver retractor resembling the blade of the butter knife was inserted between the brain and the skull. Here we can clearly see a small retractor was attached to the skull behind the base of the nose. Here we can clearly see option number 1 cannot be the answer, as here author is most agreeing with this particular statement. Option number 1 can be cancelled out. Option number 2 says a surgical microscope was positioned to enable the surgeon to see the veins. Let us see if it has any reference. Here in this particular paragraph, a surgical microscope was placed above the wound. We can clearly deduce option number 2 is incorrect. Option number 3 is the anesthesiologist de-stressed the brain by removing some of its fluid. Here in the same paragraph, the anesthesiologist began to administer a drug to relax the brain by removing some of its water, making it easier for the surgeon to manipulate the retractor, hold the brain back and see the tumor. Here we can clearly see all the options so far are absolutely correct. That means option number 4, which is the only option left to us, is the correct answer. Let us see if it has any reference or not. Here in this particular paragraph, once the tumor now removed, a most impressive sight came into view. The pituitary gland and its stalk of attachment to the hypothalamus itself and the brain stem, which conveys nerve impulses between the body and the brain. Here we can clearly see hypothalamus is basically used to convey nerve impulses between the body and the brain rather than supplying the blood into the major parts. We can clearly see option number 4 says absolutely with the author most likely seems to disagree. Option number 4 therefore has to be the correct answer. Now we hope the solution is clear to you. Thank you. करके दिखाएंगे. Hello, I'm Soumya. The passage is, and now the question. Which of the following was least likely to win intricacy with respect to the tumor at the base of the lady's brain? Now here, the solution is option number 1. Option number 1 states, the neurosurgeon and the ophthalmologist discussed several possibilities, whereas in reality, the patient and her husband was with the neurosurgeon basically discussed the various possibilities, as we can clearly see in the 3rd paragraph. From this, we can clearly deduce that option number 1 here is the only option which is not according to the paragraph and with which the author is most likely to disagree. Option number 2, the hypothalamus had to be saved from injury during the course of operation. Option number 3, removing the tumor would have led to many technical problems. And option number 4, removing the tumor might not have restored the patient's vision but would have damaged her brain, are there in the passage in paragraph number 2, and therefore the only option with which the author most likely to disagree is option number 1, and therefore the correct answer here is option number 1. Thank you. करके दिखाएंगे. Hello, I'm Soumya. The passage is, and now the question. Which of the following was not a feature of the operation? Now, for the solution, let us first check out the options. Option number 1 is 3 sets of holes were drilled through the head. Now, this is a part of an operation, as we can clearly see. Incisions were made in the muscle of the right temple and 3 sets of holes were drilled near the temple and the top of the head because the tumor had to be approached from directly in front. As we can clearly see, option number 1 does participate in the operation and therefore option number 1 has to be cancelled out. Option number 2, after opening a curved cut behind the hairline, the scalp was folded back, which is absolutely true, as we can clearly see the hairline has to be concealed when the incision was made, so that when the hair grew back, the hairline could conceal the incision. Now, here we can clearly see the option does present, the option is there in the passage, and therefore option number 2 has to be cancelled out as well. Option number 3, beneath the brain, a yellow leather-like membrane could be seen clearly. Now, even if it is a part of the paragraph, we cannot say that option number 3 is a part or a feature which has to be there in the operation. It is describing the basic structure of the brain, and therefore option number 3 cannot be a feature that was used by the author in the operation. Option number 3 cannot be the correct answer. Option number 4, electrocautery to clot the bleeding area and coagulation forceps were kept busy, which is also true as per the passage's concern. Here, plastic clips were applied to the cut edges to scalp to arrest bleeding. Here, we can clearly see something was used for the coagulation and to clot the bleeding area. Option number 4 is there in the passage and could be found in the passage as well. Option number 4 is therefore a part of the operation. The only option that does not participate and which is not a feature of the operation is option number 3, and therefore the correct answer here has to be option number 3. We hope the solution is clear to you. Thank you. करके दिखाएंगे. Hello, I'm Soumya. The passage is, and now the question. Which of the following was not a step taken by the surgeon to remove the stiff substance comprising the tumor? Now for the solution, let us check out the options that has been provided to us. Option number 1 says, the small blood vessels entering the tumor was cauterized. Now as we can clearly see, this is a medical procedure, and therefore option number 1 is absolutely true as per the passage's concern, not according to the question. Option number 1 therefore can be cancelled out. Option number 2, while the upper part of the tumor was slowly removed, the branches of the optic nerves were coagulated. Here we can clearly see the optic nerve being coagulated basically refers to the thing that was happening by itself. This was not a medical procedure at all. It is not a step to remove the tumor. Option number 2 basically refers to the thing that was happening on its own. Option number 3, the tumor was slowly cut off from the adjoining brain tissues, is a medical procedure. Option number 4, because the tumor was connected also with the right optic nerve, the surgeon placed cotonette between them, which is indeed a step that was taken by the surgeon to remove the tumor. Option number 3 and 4 are true as per the passage is concerned, whereas only option number 2 is the particular option which is not a step, that is, not a medical procedure taken by the surgeon. It happened on its own. Here the correct answer therefore is option number 2. Now we hope the solution is clear to you. Thank you. करके दिखाएंगे. Hello, I'm Soumya. The passage is, and now the question. This passage is most likely to have been extracted from. Now for the solution, let us check out the options and see which one among these might fit. Option number 1 says, a speech delivered at the conference of eminent neurosurgeons. Now, here, option number 1 is absolutely incorrect. If this was a speech that was delivered by a neurosurgeon in front of all the eminent neurosurgeons, then he would not have exaggerated the whole procedure like the way in this particular passage is. Option number 1 is absolutely incorrect. Option number 2, a school textbook. Now we cannot say that it is for certain, but let us check out the other option. Option number 3 says, a reputed medical journal. Now option number 3, as we had already seen on option number 1, cannot be place from which the passage is extracted. Here, too much data that is not relevant to the medical journal has been added. The whole procedure and things that are not related to the strict medical terms were also there. Option number 3 cannot be considered as the correct answer. Similarly, option number 4 is absolutely incorrect. The records of the journalist trying to explore medical malpractice is not the answer. Here, no malpractices has been mentioned as such. Here, the whole story is about a lady who had a tumor which has to be operated by a surgeon. Option number 4 is not doing any justice to this particular question. Therefore, option number 4 has to be cancelled out. Now we are left with only one option, which says a school textbook. Now, although one might think that this has nothing to support, but if we look through the whole passage, we can clearly see the language is too narrative and it has to be something which is not strictly to the medical field. Option number 2 is the only option which is supporting this idea. Therefore, the correct answer here has to be option number 2. Now we hope the solution is clear to you. Thank you. करके दिखाएंगे. Hello, I'm Soumya. The passage is, and now comes the question. The author winds up the passage with a. Now for the solution, let us check out the options. Option number 1 says, sarcastic comment on the apathetic attitude of doctors, which is absolutely incorrect as per the passage's concern. There was no sarcasm in the passage, and there was no apathetic attitude as such shown by the author to support this particular option. Option number 1 has to be cancelled out. Option number 2, sense of relief and humor, which is absolutely true as we can clearly see the operation went down correctly and the author or the surgeon was very much relieved. Here, the only one who appeared to be in better shape was the patient herself rather than the surgeon or her husband, adds to the humor. Option number 2 basically winds up the passage. Option number 3, hilarious comment on the health of the patient's husband, which is absolutely incorrect. Here, only patient's husband was not considered, it was the surgeon himself, and therefore option number 3 is incomplete without talking of the surgeon himself. Option number 4, diatribe on the doctor's health, which is absolutely incorrect as we had already seen with option number 3. It is about the health concerning surgeon and her husband as a humor rather than on a serious note. Option number 4 can be considered as incorrect. Option number 2 here supports the idea and therefore option number 2 is to be considered as the correct answer. Now we hope the solution is clear to you. Thank you. करके दिखाएंगे. Hello, I'm Soumya. The passage is, and now the question. The passage is written in the dash mode. Now let us come back to the options for the solution. Option number 1 says descriptive. Now if we were to relate the whole passage to this particular mode, it is absolutely correct. The whole procedure is too descriptive to be asked or even considered. Option number 1 best describes this particular question. But let us check out the other options. Option number 2 says argumentative, which is absolutely incorrect. There was no such argument. Nobody was arguing with anybody. Option number 2 has to be ignored. Option number 3, rationalistic, and option number 4, dogmatic, does not support the whole idea of this particular passage. The passage is very descriptive with a positive turn, and therefore option number 3 and 4 have to be cancelled out. Here the only option which matches with this particular question is option number 1, and therefore the correct answer here is option number 1. Thank you. करके दिखाएंगे.